Okay, guys. So we talked about enjambment when I was talking about the poem that I wrote, which, again, certainly far from my best, but fresh in my mind, and sort of what I was doing with the enjambment there. And I talked a little bit about how it's different just than where a comma is, because it's a natural pause between two. So we can briefly talk about the difference between syntax and parts of speech. Syntax is the structure of sentences and phrases. Sentence structure is a synonym. Okay, and parts of speech, adjectives, nouns, pronouns, adverbs, prepositions, verbs, etc., right? So, we're talking here about, when you're talking about commas, you're talking about syntax and sentence structure, right? And those, and pause that you need between two complete sentences that have a subject and a verb and are complete. You need to have a comma, and you need to have a conjunction, that's the Van Boys. Usually a coordinating conjunction, unless there's a subordinate conjunction that begins it, or you have a semicolon with another subordinating conjunction. So normally it's a coordinating conjunction, which is for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. However, there are also natural pauses when it comes to parts of speech. So, for example, adjectives are modifying, changing a noun, like big or tall tree. Tall tree, right? It's not a little tree, it's a tall tree. So it's modifying the noun tree. Tall is not modifying tree. If you were to break that up in a line of poetry, that would be an unnatural break between tall and tree, if you see what I mean. Whereas if you have a full phrase, even if it's not a full sentence, then you have a natural pause. And that's the difference between enjambment and caesura. You probably would not want to break up an article like the or An article is another part of speech, right? The or an with its noun. The/car is strange, right? The car goes together. Yeah, basically any unnatural break, which it's, when you explain it this way, it sounds more complex than it really is. People usually naturally get it. So while I'm reading you this poem right now, I'm going to read you a very famous poem by Dylan Thomas, who was a Welsh poet, with a rather tragic life story. He died of complications from alcoholism when he was 39, just beginning his U.S. tour, just starting to get really big, and as a poet, which is really hard to do then as now. So very young and sad that happened. And he's actually writing about death here in this poem. So let me make it a little bit bigger. While I'm reading you this poem, which you may have read before, it's pretty famous, and it's made famous by the movie Dangerous Minds with Michelle Pfeiffer. But maybe you've never seen it, or you don't remember that. But anyway, while I'm reading this to you, I want you to think about, okay, what's the rhyme scheme? Try and see if you can, is it a verse, or is it free verse, or is it a verse form? I want you to think what metaphor or simile is he using. I want you to look for rhyme. Is there internal rhyme, end rhyme, or off rhyme or slant rhyme, which is not quite rhyme? Is there meter? What kind of devices is he using? Okay, so I want you to think about this while I read you this poem. See if you can, and then think also about enjambment and caesura. Are there any enjambed lines, or are they all natural pauses? Do they all end on a natural pause? So I'm going to read it to you really slowly. Do not go gentle into that good night by Dylan Thomas. Remember that repetition of words or phrases is also another poetic device for emphasis and for sound. So just think about everything that you're seeing in this when I read this. Is it a lyric or a narrative poem? Just think about it. Okay. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Okay, I'm going to make this all now. Actually going to change the line spacing again. Because let's get it onto one page. So maybe 1.5 would be better. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so first of all, spoilers coming. I'm going to tell you what this poem is. This is a lyric poem. It's not a narrative poem. There's no clear narrative or story here. He's talking about these different, it's not a beginning, middle, and end, right? He's talking about the concepts of these different kinds of men. It's a verse form, but let's see if we can talk about that in a minute. Okay, so first let's talk about the kinds of men. He's saying, do not go gentle. You should not just give up. You should be angry about your mortality. Rave, to rant and rave, right, is to go off. At close of day here, this is a metaphor that he's using. End of your life is the close of day. Okay, so he's talking about here is wise men. They know dark is right, so they know death is a natural part of life. Because their words had forked no lightning, their words had forked no lightning, nobody listened to them. So they are bitter at the ends of their life. They do not go gentle into that good night. This is good men. The last wave by. He's using a lot here of double entendres, double meanings. The last wave, because he's talking here about a green bay, water imagery. Wave like wave or wave like wave goodbye, right? So double meaning. Crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. They rage, rage against the dying of the light. So their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay if only they had been able to do them, but they weren't. So their deeds were frail. So they rage against the dying of the light. Their good didn't get noticed in the world. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. This was the poet. He was an alcoholic, and he died of his alcoholism, right? He was a wild man. Caught and sang, they caught the sun, and they chased it like Icarus. They flew too close to the sun. They grieved it on its way. They caused the dark to come earlier by making the light go faster, by making their bodies sick, right? And once they realize that's happening, they do not go gentle into that good night. They die like Edgar Allan Poe did, like face down in a gutter from, or like him. Yes, complications from alcoholism. Some people, there's, I'm not sure if it's an urban legend, but there's like a story going around that it was during a drinking contest. So like he was definitely that wild man, right? Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Again, grave men. This is a double meaning. Men who always had one foot in the grave, who were always depressed their whole lives. When they see with blinding sight at the very end of their lives, it's like they finally feel happy that the end is near, and then ironically, that happiness causes them to feel happy and not want to die. So it's like the fact that the end is near it's like a catch-22. They're finally feeling happy and they don't want to die, but they only could feel happy by the knowledge that they would die. And their blind eyes, they're blind to the happiness of life their whole lives. They blaze like meteors at the end of their lives, and they suddenly feel happy, and then they have to die, and they rage against that. They're angry. So he's talking to his father who's dying, and he says, "You, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Curse me, call me names, or bless me, tell me you love me. Cry, But don't just lay there in your hospital bed or your, doing nothing and fade away. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Okay, so let's talk a little bit first about the enjambment. Caesura, 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 right? Enjambment. Subject is they, and go is the verb. Breaking up subject and verb. Why? Because this starts out as a command, and then it becomes a simple first-person present. So this is a clever little way of working it into the sentence, right? And repeating that line. They do not go gentle into that good night. Also, obviously, for the rhyme of they and day, but also to work it into the sentence. What was a command form becomes just a regular present simple sentence. Okay, this is enjambment, not caesura. Bright goes with deeds. Bright and frail deeds. This is an adjective that's modifying a noun. So why did he break it here? Because there's a double meaning. Good man, the last way by, crying how bright. Oh, it's the light. I want to walk towards the light. How bright. But no, that's not what they're saying. They're saying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. If only anyone had noticed they were good men and paid attention to their deeds. So they rage against the light. So double meaning right here. Caesura, caesura. These he all uses commas on, except for this is also caesura, but no comma. Notice it's a natural pause. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Beginning of a new phrase. Blind eyes can see plays like meteors and be gay. So posts are not always consistent with using commas, but it's still a caesura, a natural pause. Okay, let's talk about the rhyme scheme really quick here. All right, so it's obviously A, B, right? C, D, wait, A, B, A, C, D, C, okay. Oh, no, wait. Never mind, sorry, I'm thinking of the sonnet. Never mind, sorry about that. It's A, B, A all the way down. Because it's night, right, day, they, bay, way, right, night, right, light, flight, okay, so it's A, B, A all the way down. A, B, A all the way down. A, B, A, A, B, A. Each one is a tercet, 3 lines, okay. Sorry, my mind is still on sonnets, not villan. Well, I just gave it away. This is called a villanelle. It is a verse form. Okay, A, B, A. They're all 3 lines until the very end, where you have A, B, right? Height is A, pray is B, yes. Okay, then you have night and light. A, B, A. 4 lines. Okay, so that's the verse form, but what are you maybe not noticing? He does this so very cleverly that you almost don't really notice. 1, 3, right? 1, 3. These whole lines are repeated, alternating at the end of each tercet. 1, 3, and then there are together 1 and 3, A and A. So those lines repeat as alternating in each stanza, throughout each stanza of 3 lines. Throughout the poem, those lines repeat, alternating. Originally, the villanelle was this is also an example of literary irony because it's a light-hearted, funny French form. Funny French form is alliteration. Light-hearted, funny French form. And this is quite obviously not. So that's an example of irony. That's obviously not funny, but it's ironic. The opposite of what you'd expect. This is a poem about death. That's quite heavy, right? 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. Alternating ABA, 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 AB, AA. Called a villanelle is the form. A villanelle. This is one of the most famous English language villanelles, and altogether one of the most famous villanelles, I think. And I hope you understand enjambment a little bit better now as well as metaphor and simile. Fork no lightning, metaphor. Okay.